You have got to be kidding me.
Can I help you?
Yes, you can start by telling me what you are doing in my house.
Your house? I think you have got the wrong address.
No, I do not. My name is Promise Clay. Franklin Bernard died 3 weeks ago. According to his will, this house belongs to me.
Promise Clay shoved the key into the lock and twisted. Nothing happened. She tried again, harder this time. The old brass key scraped against something inside the lock, but the front door refused to move. You have got to be kidding me. Promise dropped her overnight bag onto the porch and pulled the folded letter from her coat pocket. She checked the address for what had to be the 5th time. 214 Willowmere Street, Savannah, Georgia. This was definitely the house. She reached for the lock again. The door suddenly opened from the other side. Promise stumbled backward. A tall man stood in the doorway, holding a cordless drill in one hand. Sawdust covered the front of his gray shirt, and his dark hair looked as if he had been running his fingers through it all morning. He stared at her. She stared back. Then his eyes dropped to the key in her hand. "Can I help you?" Promise straightened. "Yes. You can start by telling me what you are doing in my house." The man's eyebrows lifted. "Your house, yes." He glanced over his shoulder before looking back at her. "I think you have got the wrong address." Promise pulled the legal document from her bag. "No, I do not." She held it toward him. "My name is Promise Clay. Franklin Bernard died 3 weeks ago. According to his will, this house belongs to me." The drill slowly lowered in the man's hand. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he placed the drill on a table inside the doorway. "My name is Steven Hart." "Okay, Steven Hart, why are you living in my house?" Steven reached into his pocket. He pulled out a key. Not a new key. An old brass one nearly identical to hers. "Because Franklin gave me this 6 years ago." Promise stared at it. Steven closed his fingers around the key. "And he told me this house would be mine when he died." Promise looked from Steven to the documents in her hand. She had driven 4 hours to claim a house inherited from a man she had never met. Now a stranger was standing inside it with his own key. And somehow, both of them believed the dead man had chosen them. If stories about hidden family secrets, unexpected love, and mysteries buried for decades are your kind of stories, subscribe to the channel, because what Promise discovered inside that house changed everything she believed about her own life. 3 days earlier, Promise had been sitting at her kitchen table in Atlanta when the certified envelope arrived. She nearly ignored it. Her mother's death 11 months earlier had left her with enough paperwork to last a lifetime. Insurance forms, hospital bills, bank statements. Promise was tired of envelopes. Then she saw the words, "Estate of Franklin Bernard." She opened it. 20 minutes later, she called the law office because she was convinced someone had made a mistake. They had not. Franklin Bernard, a 76-year-old retired architect from Savannah, had named Promise as beneficiary of his home. The property was worth close to $700,000. Promise had never heard his name. She searched through everything her mother, Jane, had left behind. Nothing. No Franklin. No Bernard. No Savannah connection she knew about. The will contained one unusual condition. Before Promise could sell the property, she had to spend 7 consecutive days inside it. That was how she ended up standing on Franklin's porch facing Steven Hart. Promise pushed past him. Steven stepped aside. "Excuse me, you heard me." She entered the foyer. The house was beautiful. Old hardwood floors ran beneath a sweeping staircase. Morning sunlight poured through tall windows. Tools and pieces of lumber were stacked neatly near one wall. Promise turned. You are renovating it, restoring it. Same thing. No, it is not. Promise stared at him. Steven stared right back. She unfolded the will. Franklin left this property to me. Steven walked toward a desk and opened a drawer. Franklin told me something different. He returned with a folded piece of paper. Promise took it. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. Steven, as long as this house stands, you will always have a home here, Franklin. Promise read it twice. This is not a will, I know. So legally, the house is mine. I know that too. Then why are we arguing? Because legal and right are not always the same thing. Promise's jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone and called June Bernard. June was Franklin's niece and executor. She answered quickly. Promise, there is a man living here. Silence. Promise walked toward the window. You knew. June. Exhaled. Steven Hart. Yes. He helped my uncle for several years. He says Franklin promised him the house. He does not have a deed. Promise glanced toward Steven. So I can make him leave. Legally, yes. Steven's expression hardened. June continued. If I were you, I would begin the process immediately. Franklin became sentimental toward the end. Steven walked away before Promise ended the call. She followed him into the kitchen. You heard her. I did. I do not want trouble. Steven opened a cabinet and removed a mug. Neither do I. Then leave. He turned. Franklin was family to me. He was not family to me at all. Then why did he leave you his house? Promise had no answer. Steven filled the kettle. She watched him. I will be here 7 days. Then I am selling. His hand stopped. What? The will requires me to stay 7 days before I sell. You have been here 5 minutes. And you have already decided. I have a life in Atlanta. Steven gave a humorless laugh. This house meant everything to Franklin. It does not mean everything to me. That much is obvious. Promise stepped closer. You do not know anything about me, and you do not know anything about him. He walked past her. That evening, Promise chose a bedroom at the opposite end of the upstairs hallway. She tried working on her laptop, but every few minutes came the sound of Steven repairing something downstairs. Hammering, drilling, sanding. Finally, she marched down. Do you ever stop? Steven looked up from a damaged cabinet door. When something is finished, it is almost 9. He checked his watch. 8:17, close enough. He set the screwdriver down. Better, much. Promise turned toward the stairs. Then she noticed the walls. Several empty spaces interrupted a row of framed photographs. She pointed. What was there? Steven followed her gaze. Pictures. Obviously. They disappeared after Franklin died. Who took them? I do not know. Promise continued toward the study. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Architectural drawings covered one table. Then she saw a photograph half hidden behind a stack of books. Promise froze. She picked it up. A young Franklin Bernard stood beside a smiling woman in front of the house. Promise's fingers tightened around the frame. Steven appeared in the doorway. What is it? Promise turned the photograph toward him. The woman was barely 25, but Promise knew that smile. That is my mother. Steven moved closer. You are sure? Her name was Jane Clay. Steven's face changed. Jane. You know that name. Franklin mentioned a Jane once. When? A few years ago. He would not explain. Promise looked at the photograph again. Jane had spent her entire life telling Promise that Savannah was just a city she had passed through when she was young. Yet there she was beside Franklin. Promise grabbed her phone and called June. June answered on the fourth ring. Promise, it is late. Did Franklin know my mother? Silence. Promise stared at the photograph. June. Yes. Promise's grip tightened. How? They knew each other years ago. Why did not you tell me? Because it does not change anything. It changes everything. Promise, Franklin is dead. Jane is dead. Some things do not need to be pulled apart simply because you are curious. Promise lowered her voice. What are not you telling me? Good night, Promise. The call ended. Promise slowly lowered the phone. Steven was still standing there. She knows. Apparently. And she does not want me to know. Steven nodded toward the photograph. Then maybe Franklin did. The next morning, Promise found Steven making coffee. She placed the photograph on the table. I am not selling yet. Steven looked up. I thought you were here 7 days. I am not making any decisions until I know why Franklin knew my mother. Steven poured another cup. Then you are going to need this. She accepted it. Temporary peace. Temporary. For the next 2 days, they searched. Franklin had kept everything. Receipts from 30 years earlier. Old architectural contracts, Christmas cards, newspaper clippings. Promise noticed Steven never treated Franklin's possessions like junk. He opened boxes carefully and returned everything to its place. At lunch, Promise caught him making 2 sandwiches. You made 1 for me. I made 2 for myself. She reached for 1. Then you made 1 for me. He almost smiled. That night, they found nothing. The following afternoon, Steven pulled an old architecture book from a shelf. An envelope fell out. Promise picked it. Up. Her breathing stopped. Written across the front were 6 words. For Promise, when she finally comes home. Steven looked at her. He knew you would come. He could not have. Promise tore open the envelope. A small brass key fell into her palm. They both looked upstairs. There was only one locked door in the house. Franklin's private room. Steven had tried opening it after Franklin died, but none of his keys worked. Promise inserted the brass key. The lock clicked. Steven reached for the handle. Promise caught his wrist. Wait. He looked at her. What if I do not want to know? Steven did not answer immediately. Then we close it. Promise looked at the door. Her hand remained around his wrist. Then she released him. Open it. Steven pushed the door inward. Promise stepped inside and stopped. Her own face stared back at her. Photographs covered a corkboard. Promise at 16. Promise graduating college. Promise standing beside Jane at a charity dinner. A newspaper clipping about an event she had organized in Atlanta. A photograph of Promise crossing a street that she did not remember anyone taking. She backed away. What is this? Steven stared around the room. I do not know. He was watching me. Promise. This is insane. She ripped one photograph from the board. Where did he get these? Steven opened a drawer. Inside were envelopes tied with faded ribbon. Promise. She turned. The top envelope carried Jane's handwriting. Franklin, I received the money. Promise needs new shoes, so thank you. But I meant what I said. This has to stop. Promise snatched the letter. She read faster. Another letter. Then another. Jane had written Franklin for years. Steven sat quietly while Promise read. Finally, she whispered, My mother lied to me. You do not know that. She told me nobody helped us. Maybe she had a reason. Promise found another envelope. Inside was a small cassette tape labeled for Promise. Steven located Franklin's old tape player downstairs. They sat side by side at the kitchen table. Promise pressed play. Static filled the room. Then Franklin's voice. If you are hearing this, Promise, then I ran out of time. Promise covered her mouth. I owe you the truth your mother was too frightened to give you. Steven looked at her. The recording continued. Jane came to work for my architecture firm when she was 24. She was brilliant, stubborn, and far stronger than she knew. My business partner took advantage of her trust. When she became pregnant, he refused to acknowledge the child. Promise's eyes filled. Franklin named him Richard Vale. He was married, Franklin continued. He threatened Jane's career if she spoke publicly. I discovered what he had done and confronted him. I helped Jane leave Savannah. She made me promise never to tell you the truth while she was alive. Promise stopped the tape. She stood so quickly the chair scraped backward. My father knew. Steven remained still. He knew I existed. Promise walked to the window. He was not some man who disappeared before she could tell him. He knew. Steven approached carefully. Promise wiped her face before he could reach her. Do not. He stopped. I do not need anyone feeling sorry for me. I was not going to. What were you going to do? Stand here. That broke something in her. Promise laughed once through her tears. That is your solution. Sometimes. She looked at him. That is terrible. Usually. For the first time since the recording began, she smiled. Then Steven's gaze shifted toward the tape player. Promise. What? Richard Vale. She waited. Steven swallowed. My adoptive father worked for him. Promise's smile disappeared. Steven sat. I was adopted when I was 6 months old. My parents never hid it. My father later became one of Vale's contractors. After my dad died, I found old correspondence connecting him to Franklin and Vale. That is how I first found Franklin. So, you are not related to Vale. No. Why did Franklin let you stay here? Because when I showed up asking questions, I did not have much else. Steven rubbed his hands together. My contracting business had collapsed. My engagement was over. I was sleeping in my truck some nights. Franklin offered me the guest room for a week. Promise glanced around. And you stayed 6 years. Apparently I am bad at leaving. Promise pressed play again. Franklin's voice returned. I could not undo what Richard did to Jane. I could not give Promise the father she deserved. Years later, when Steven arrived, carrying wounds created by people, connected to that same chapter of my life, I realized something. I had spent decades keeping secrets when perhaps I should have been building something better. The tape clicked off. Promise and Steven sat in silence. Over the following days, something changed between them. They stopped searching like opponents. They cooked together. Steven showed Promise the restoration plans Franklin had drawn. One evening, he led her into a large, unfinished room at the back of the house. Franklin wanted this to become a workshop. For what? Kids aging out of foster care? Carpentry, restoration, basic construction? Skills they could actually earn money with. Promise ran her fingers across a workbench. You were going to run it. That was the plan. What happened? He got sick. Promise looked around. So when you said the house was yours, I did not care about owning it. Steven leaned against the bench. I cared about finishing this. That night, they sat on the porch steps. Promise told Steven about Jane working 2 jobs when she was young. Steven told her about being adopted and spending years wondering why his biological parents had not kept him. Promise nudged his shoulder. Maybe that is why you are so stubborn. Maybe that is why you are bossy. I am not bossy. You tried evicting me within 10 minutes. You were trespassing. I had a key. So did I. Steven laughed. Promise looked at him. For a second, neither moved. Steven's smile faded. He leaned slightly closer. Promise did not pull away. Then headlights swept across the porch. A car stopped outside. June stepped out. She carried a folder. "I need to speak to Promise." Steven stood. June looked at him. Alone. Inside the study, June placed the folder on Franklin's desk. "You should see this before you make decisions based on sentiment." Promise opened it. It was an earlier version of Franklin's will. Her eyes moved down the page. The house had been left to Steven. She looked toward the doorway. Steven stood there. His face told her everything. "You knew." Steven stepped inside. "Promise. You knew there was another will." "Yes. And you never told me. I did not know why he changed it, but you knew he had. I was going to tell you." "When?" June folded her arms. Promise stared at Steven. "All this time, you are helping me find letters, showing me his plans, telling me how much this house meant to you. It was not like that. Were you hoping I would feel guilty?" "No." "Were you hoping I would give it to you?" "No." "Then why did not you tell me?" Steven had no answer that could fix it. Promise pointed toward the hall. "Leave." June watched silently. Steven looked at Promise. "I never lied about what Franklin meant to me. You just left out the part where you thought the house should be yours. I do not think it should be mine." "Then prove it." Steven stared at her. Promise's voice trembled. "Give me the key." He reached into his pocket. For 6 years, that key had meant he had somewhere to return to. He placed it on Franklin's desk. Then he walked upstairs. 20 minutes later, Steven came down carrying a duffel bag. Promise stood near the staircase. He paused beside her. "I was not trying to take anything from you." Promise said nothing. Steven opened the door. "You are so convinced people leave because they do not want you that you do not notice when you are the one making them go." The door closed behind him. Promise remained frozen. June picked up her handbag. "You did the right thing." Promise turned toward her. "Did I?" June did not answer. That night, Promise wandered through the silent house. She opened the refrigerator. 2 containers sat inside. Steven had labeled one. "Promise, do not steal mine." She shut the door. Upstairs, his room was empty. The next morning was Promise's 7th day. She called the real estate agent. "I want to list the house." The agent promised to send paperwork. Promise began cleaning Franklin's study. She pulled open the bottom drawer of his drafting desk. It stuck. She pulled harder. The drawer came free. Behind it was a narrow wooden compartment. Inside was one envelope. For June. Promise stared at it. An hour later, June stood across from her. "Where did you find that?" "Franklin's desk." June reached for it. Promise pulled it away. "Why were you so determined to get Steven out? Because the house belongs to you." "That is not what I asked." June's face tightened. Promise opened Franklin's letter. She read aloud. "June, if Promise is reading this with you, then I suspect my attempts at keeping this family together have created one final mess." June looked away. Promise continued. Franklin explained that the earlier will had indeed left the house to Steven. Then he discovered June intended to challenge it. "You were going to fight Steven." June's eyes flashed. "He was not family. He cared for Franklin for 6 years. I was his family for 48. June's voice cracked. "Do you know what it was like watching my uncle spend his final years trying to repair everyone else's life? Jane's. Yours. Steven's. He kept giving pieces of himself to strangers." Promise lowered the letter. "So you removed the photographs." June looked at the empty spaces on the walls. "I thought if you did not know, you would sell. And then, the estate would finally be finished." Promise looked down at Franklin's letter. His final explanation was simple. He had not changed the will because Steven had disappointed him. He changed it because Promise's documented connection to Jane gave her a stronger position against a family challenge. But Franklin had not commanded Promise to share the house. He wanted her to learn the truth first, then choose. Promise folded the letter. June wiped her cheek. "What are you going to do?" Promise picked up Steven's key from the desk. For the first time in this entire mess. She closed her fingers around it. Something nobody else decided for me. Steven was working in a rented garage across town when Promise found him. He was sanding a cabinet and did not hear her enter. She knocked on the open door. Steven looked up. His expression hardened. "If you are here about something I left," Promise tossed the brass key. He caught it instinctively. Steven stared at his palm. "I do not want it. That is unfortunate." "Promise. Franklin changed the will because June planned to challenge yours." Steven slowly lowered his hand. "What?" "He was not choosing me over you." Promise stepped closer. "He was protecting the house." Steven looked at the key again. "It is still yours. I know. Then why are you giving this back?" "I am not giving you my house." Steven raised an eyebrow. Promise almost smiled. "I am asking you to come home." He did not move. She continued. "I canceled the listing." "Why?" "Because Franklin had a good idea." "The workshop." "The workshop." Steven stared at her. "You hated Savannah 6 days ago." "I have had a complicated week." He laughed despite himself. Promise took another step. "I know what it feels like to spend your life wondering why somebody did not choose you." Steven's smile disappeared. "I do not want to keep living that way." She pointed toward the key. "And I am done deciding that everyone is going to leave before they get the chance to stay." Steven closed his fingers around it. "You are still bossy. You are still homeless unless you come with me. That house was my home before you arrived. Legal paperwork says otherwise." Steven laughed. Then he reached for her hand. This time, Promise let him take it. 6 months later, the front doors of 214 Willowmere Street opened again. But this time, nobody was arguing over a key. Young men and women carried toolboxes through the hallway while Steven directed them toward the renovated workshop. A new sign hung beside the door, the Bernard House Restoration Program. Promise stood near the staircase organizing the evening's fundraising event. Steven walked toward her. "You are staring." Promise nodded toward the wall. The missing photographs had been returned. Franklin and Jane stood together again in their old picture. Beside it hung a new photograph. Promise and Steven stood on the porch, surrounded by the first 6 young people accepted into the program. Steven slipped his hand into hers. "Do you ever think about selling?" Promise looked at him. "Do you ever think about getting your own place?" "Constantly. Good, never seriously." She laughed. Later, after everyone left, they sat on the porch where they had almost kissed months earlier. Steven looked toward the restored windows. "Why did you really stay?" Promise was quiet. Then she looked at him. "I spent almost 30 years wondering why someone did not choose me." Steven waited. "I think Franklin was trying to teach me that I could choose where I belonged." Steven squeezed her hand. Inside the hallway, beneath Franklin's photograph, Promise had placed a small framed copy of one sentence from his final letter. "A house is only wood, brick, and nails. A home begins when someone decides there is room for you." Promise had arrived in Savannah believing a dead stranger had inexplicably left her a $700,000 house. Instead, Franklin Bernard had left her something money could not measure. He gave her the truth about her mother. He gave Steven the chance to finish the work they had started together. And somehow, through one legal deed and one old brass key, he brought two people into the same house who had spent most of their lives wondering whether they truly belonged anywhere. Promise received the deed. Steven received the key. Neither inheritance made sense without the other. And perhaps that had been Franklin's plan all along. Not to decide their future for them, not to force two strangers together, but to leave the door unlocked just long enough for them to discover that family was not always the person whose blood they shared. Sometimes it was the person who stayed. Sometimes it was the person who handed back the key. And sometimes home was simply the place where someone finally looked at them and said, without needing to say the words at all, "There is room for you here." If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about love, family, hidden truths, and the unexpected moments that can change a life forever. And remember, sometimes the door that seems to lead into someone else's past is the very door that leads you home.